I will always remember that day in stark contrast to the tranquil and habitual days to which I had become accustomed to viraching. Transformed abruptly that morning, I arose as customary, prepared a cup of coffee, and positioned myself near the window to see the external world. At 59, I retained a sense of youthful spirit. I declined tokenage the inevitability of aging. He had maintained my self-care regimen exercised consistently, and each time it gazed into the mirror, I endeavored to perceive as somebody who remained vibrant and appealing. However, that void within Marimond and Fall, Anthony, the name of Theodelivery boy, was Anthony each time. Countered him, I experienced an unusual session, a warmth accompanied by an enigmatic attracting. He was 23 years old. Perhaps it was his exuberant vitality that attracted me to him for the preceding months. I had been incessant ordering tombs, online books, home decor, and occasionally superfluous stuff merely to hear the doorbell chime and witness his presence. I repeatedly admonished myself. These emotions were unsuitable. Yet me heart would race each time on that day as I was entering. I observed Anthony Delavan parcels in the area. He rode past me on his motorbike. Unexpectedly, his tire lost traction and he collapsed directly bare. "Me, Anthony," I exclaimed, my pulse racing as I discarded my backpack and sprinted towards him. His knee and elbow were severely scratched and his face was contorted in anguish. Nevertheless, Hestel succeeded in displaying his welcoming smile. "Judith, I am well," he asserted. "It was nothing serious." However, his voice quavered slightly. "Do not be absurd, and I assertively state, do not inform me that you are well. Enter Sautate. I may examine you." I assisted in maneuvering his bike onto Theckerb and provided support as we proceeded to Meyersiddens. Initially, he exhibited reluctance, although my persistence compelled him to pause upon entering. I directed him to the couch in my living room. I retrieved me first aid kit and commenced the treatment of his wounds. My hands trembled, however, I stroked to stabilize them to prevent Anthony from observing. While I worked, he saw his youthful and vibrant appearance. Close, however, there was a maturity in his expression that surprised me. "Apologies for disturbing you in this matter," Judith remarked, smiling. "However, that is not as significant matter." Annoyed, I scoffed, attempting to appear severe, but failing to conceal my smile. "You sustain an injury from a fall, do you? Believe I will simply abandon you. Regain your composure, Anthony." As I applied the bandages, I observed that he had become silent. His gaze was fixed upon me, and the atmosphere between us became dense. Willipling the bandage to his arm, our hands briefly made contact. Inadvertent contact heightened the quiet between us. "Judith," he commenced gently, his tone uncertain, "I was not anticipating your kinness. The majority of individuals prefer that." I delivered their things and depart promptly. I gazed at him. An inward transformation occurred within me. "Anthony, you are not merely a delivery person. I observe your gaze towards others, and your consideration for the mere presence invigorates me in a manner I have not experienced in quite some time," I confessed, my voice quavering slightly as my cheeks reened. The words could not be retracted now. Anthony's demeanor shifted. His eyes exhibited a renewed drive, accompanied by animistically magnetic quality. Gradually he inclined nearer, his eyes fixed on mine. Prior to the further escalation of this narrative, ensure ya subscribe to my channel and active attentive visions to stay informed about subsequent. Your encouragement through comments and likes is invaluable to meet that instant. Anthony's gaze met many and the atmosphere between us. "Bucham, this was merely the commencement," he remarked after a little pause. "That the location of his current residence is quite distant from his workless daily commuting is hard. I have been contemplating locating a more approximate place. Nonetheless, the cossari excessive elevated." Upon his utterance, a sensation awakened within my chest. I recognized my ability to assist him, and this notion instilled in me an unusual exhilaration. Anthony I stated gently, yet firmly, "I possess a modest flat adjacento Meyersiddens. It has not been leased yet. I've desired You may relocate for a highly competitive price. It will facilitate our tesotes. Anthony regarded me with astonishment. Indeed, Judith, there is no necessity for you to exhibit suckinness, he stated. His voice was imbued with incredulity. However, I had already solved my decision from that moment forward. I realized that everything was poised to transform. Indeed, that occurred that day marked the initial step toward disrupting the routine of my existence. This narrative was Merrill commenting at that point. The tension between us intensified as I attended to his wounds. He grasped his arm, although my hand remained on his skin for an extended duration. Momentarily, my gaze traversed his robust shoulders and powerful arms. I observed him scrutinizing me as well attentively. His glance traversed my legs, waist, and shoulders. The agitation was within my intensified, regardless of my efforts to disregard it. I was becoming disoriented in that time. My hands quivered as he completed thebonging as I stooped to retrieve a fallen bandage. Simultaneous lighter himself, resulting in our hands to inadvertently making contact. Once more, both became immobilized. The electricity from that fleeting contact intensified the quiet between us as I gradually straightened. Our gazes met once again. I attempted to interpret the emotion on his face. His eyes reflected doubt, yet also an unmistakable allure, a magnetic appeal. Judith, he uttered, his tone more gentle than I had ever perceived. I must admit I did not anticipate your kindness. The majority of individuals prefer that I deliver their things and depart promptly. They would not make effort for an individual such as me. I genuinely believe I am unworthy of such attention. Hearing such remarks caused me to momentarily lose my composure. Upon observing him, I discerned a profound and mature quality in this young man. I attempted to compose myself, alighting a faint laugh. Anthony, you relocate to the apartment at your discretion. I remarked that it seems I'd been anticipating your action all along, so alleviating the tension slightly. Anthony appeared further astonished. Indeed, Judith, I must act swiftly. My landlord is attempting to evict me. Additionally, I must complete my deliveries. He stated, his tone somewhat hurried. He promptly rose to depart. Booth hesitated to obtain my number before exiting. At that moment, the tension between us reached its zenith. While tending to his wounds, my hand rested on his flesh, and our eyes met. Repeated Lyoc encounter extending somewhat longer on. Unmistakable and electric connection was developing between us. I recognized that this was merely the inception of an issue I could not overlook. Upon hearing those comments, I momentarily lost my composure. Upon observing him, I discerned a profound depth and maturity in this young man that surprised me. I endeavored to compose myself, eliciting a smile and emitting a gentle laugh. Anthony, you are invited to relocate to the apartment adjacent to my residence at your convenience. I had been anticipating Betrayal Vault all along, I remarked, alleviating strain slightly. Anthony appeared astonished. Indeed, Judith, I must act swiftly. My landlord is attempting to evict me, and I still need to complete my delivery, he stated, his tone rather hurried. He promptly rose to depart, but not before obtaining my number. The following morning, I observed Anthony arriving in a sizable truck, accompanied by two of his associates. They commenced transferring his possessions inside the apartment. As I stood outside my window, I observed him transporting the large boxes with his robust, muscular arms. I was unable to avert my gaze. A sensation awakened within me, one I had not felt in years. Each action he executed apparetto captivate my attention. His exuberant vitality and the vivacist it possessed it was captivating. Eventually, I regained my composure, filled a with coffee, and approached them. I remarked with a smile that you all must be fatigued. I would want to extend an invitation for supper. Let us convene and partake in a delightful lunch collectively. Anthony and his companions expressed their gratitude, but Anthony remarked, Judith, that is exceedingly kind of you, yet my friends must return their journey home. It's extensive. I experienced a slight twinge of disappointment, however, concealed it effectively as nighttime arrived. Anthony Aparoduna company. Upon observing him standing there, I experienced a blend of astonishment and exhilaration. I welcomed him with a smile. "Where are your acquaintances?" He shrugged and offered me a slight smile. They were compelled to depart. They were unable to remain, however. He expressed his reluctance to leave her alone that evening. The torrents of those words elicited a warm sensation within me throughout their manner. Of the evening at dinner, our dialogue went ties at that point. I saw this was merely the inception of something novel. Honestly, I remarked with a slight smile while gazing into Anoni's eyes. I anticipated everyone's presence. However, if it is only you, I suppose there is no detriment in uncorking a bottle of wine. I consistently relish wine during dinner. Anthony reciprocated the smile, his gaze fixed on mine that appears to be ideal wine and culinary preparation. What more requests could he make? His words ignited a small spark within me. I proceeded to the kitchen, retrieved a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses, and transported them to Theatable. Upon opening the bottle, I endeavored to disregard Anthony's gazelle, which scrutinized me as if he were attempting to decipher my essence. However, I sensed his gaze tracking my every reaction during dinner, aided by a modest amount of winter dialogue. Became increasing glinted solitude, I remarked, sipping my wine. At times it is nearly untenable. It can induce frustration. I perceive that I have devoted the most of my existence to serving others now. I recognize the extent of the time I have squandered. Anthony listened, attentive. Elias' demeanor, gentle and empathetic love, loneliness, iscalinging at enarge. However, Judith, your residence, culinary skills, and attire all reflect considerable care and effort. Should have maintained your beauty remarkably. It seems unjust that an individual of your caliber must reside in solitude. Those words surprised me, igniting a profound warmth within. I could not recall the last occasion when Simeon had addressed me in such a manner. My heart accelerated as a gazetto, his eyes recognizing. This connection we were cultivating was an experience I had not encountered in years. Those statements astonished and profoundly affected me. No one had uttered anything of that nature to me in years. My heart began to race. "I comprehend your point," I stated gently. "However, at times, despite your utmost efforts, your contributions gone recognized." Anthony placed his wineglass on the table and leaned in towards me. Perceived the intensity of his profound, concentrated gaze. He asserted, his tone low and unwavering. "You are a mistake in your presence, inescapable." Those remarks elicited a profound response within me. The warm thought of the wine exacerbated the conflict between my heart and mind. His gaze remained directed at me. The manner in which this young man regarded me with such intensity evoked a thrill I had not experienced in a considerable time. Sony, you are exceedingly gracious, I remarked with a faint smile, albeit my voice quivered slightly. I interlocked my fingers in my lap, yet I was unable to avert my gaze from his eyes. At that time, if distance between us simmered significantly, he spoke abruptly. "I must be candid with you," his tone becoming more profound upon my arrival. "I sought a new beginning. However, the more I have conversed with you, the more my desire has become to understand you more profoundly. There is an unusual quality about you, Judith. It is as though you had a luminous essence, something vibrant." His remarks rendered me speechless. The wine, the ambience, his star, everything overwhelmed me simultaneously. I inhaled deeply, yet my heart raced uncontrollably, rendering it impossible to achieve a tranquility. Anthony I stated, fixing my gaze upon his, "You have rendered this evening exceptionally amiable. No individual has evoked this sentiment in me for an extended period." At that point, the tension between us culminated. When Anthony's gaze intersected with mine, it felt as thought time had ceased, impulsively entranced by enchantment of the moment. I inclined toward him. Upon the meeting of our lips, me heart felt as though it would erupt from my chest. His kiss sparked emotions within me that I had repressed. For Your see it reality subsequently overwhelmed May. Swiftly withdrew, my face wringed with embarrassment, my thoughts descending, wind-torn. This is not correct, I whisper a dater my gaze as I staggered towards kitchen, attempting to flee turmoil within me. I was unaware Thadden Thoney had following me until I sensed his hands on my waist. His warmth and proximity halted me progress. Judith, he stated, his tone subdued yet resolute. He carefully rotated me to confront him, his gaze intertwining with me before he kissed me. Once more, this time more profoundly and intensely, I was unable to breathe. This was inescapable. My hands automatic like grade. His shoulders as his muscular arms enveloped me securely. I perceived that we were Thessal individuals in Anthony paused the kiss momentarily and gazed into my eyes. Judith, do you genuinely desire this? Hemurmured, the resolve and warmth in his voice utterly disarmed me. I nodded subtly, my voice little above a murmur affirmative. He softly placed his hand on my back and slowly led me upstairs to the bedroom. My heart was racing uncontrollably with each stride. My anticipation, upon entering the room, I positioned myself on the edge of the bed while Anthony stood before me, momentarily hesitating. His eyes surveyed me, and I sensed the intensity of his gaze. I elevated my hands to my shoulders, gradually lowering delicate straps of my dress. The silk cascaded over my flesh and tugged at my feet. Anthony's gaze, filled with adoration and want, intensified. The attraction I experienced towards him this event was unprecedented in my imagination for years. The sole remaining action was to wholly submit to their rhythm. Of the night prior to reclining on the bed, I observed my reflection in the mirror situated across the room. I appeared sophisticated and dentising. At that point, Anthony tenderly positioned his hands on my shoulders, directing me to recline on the bed as he hung over me, his gaze fixed on mine. His hands rested on my waist, moving gradually. At that moment, I experienced an emotion I had not felt in a considerable while, one I'd profoundly earned, for I responded promptly, meeting a sound that astonished even myself. I was unable to determine the appropriate position for my hands. I felt overwhelmed by my emotions. Everything was exquisite, and I had longed for it immensely. The feelings coursing through me were overwhelmed by the intensity. I closed my eyes and surrendered to the experience. Upon opening my eyes to observe Anthony, I found him hot and breathless. The sight exhilarated, aided memo. I found myself whispering, imploring for it to recur. Anthony panted. I desire it more than you do. That day, he elicited a level of happiness in me that I had not experienced in years. He appeared irretrievably relaxed, reclining beside me, his breaths gradually stabilizing. Upon observing the fluorescence to the bed, I noticed the disarray of clothing and smiled. I had greatly missed this. Anthony's warm breath caressed my neck as we reclined adjacent to one another. The silence between us was solely punctuated by the sound of our respiration following the recent events. A tranquil calm enveloped the atmosphere. I could still sense the residual thrill within me. I glanced at him. Judith, Anthony stated, his gaze locking with mine. I desired to escape with you to a coastal town, just the two of us. What eyes ye are? Pinion, the thought ignited a surge of exhilaration within me, a sensation I had not experienced in quite some time. A holiday. I responded with a smile expressing my enthusiasm. However, I am confident that this will not be an ordinary excursion, I remarked, observing the glimmer in his eyes. Anthony chuckled quietly, extending his hand to delicately sweep my hair away from my face. Negative. Judith has stated that this is merely the commencement. That point, we both realized that this vocation would not merely serve as an escape. This would initiate a novel endeavor, one that would fortify our connection. This narrative does not conclude here. The events of that vacation, among other matters, remain forthcoming. Remain attentive if you have reached this point. I am aware that my narrative has profoundly affected you. There is far more to convey, and you will not wish to overlook any detail, remember? 2. Click follow button. Activate notifications sand. Provide a comment regarding your thoughts on this narrative.